Well, speaking of the vibe, with less than 20 days to go until the referendum, the latest Newspoll shows that support for the Voice has dropped to just 36%. A survey of 1,239 voters showed that 56% of people intend on voting no, just 36% say they'll vote yes, and 8% of people are undecided. The only age group where a majority support the Voice is in the 18 to 34-year-old cohort, where 50% say they'll vote yes, but that's down from 70% when the referendum was first announced. So, with the polls all pointing to a referendum defeat, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has started to reposition the whole exercise as an awareness campaign. Have a look at this.
For me, it's a positive that this referendum is raising the awareness of the Australian people about the gaps that are there between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australia.
So there you go. Never mind, the division that's ripped the country to shreds. Never mind the $364 million that's been spent on this referendum. It doesn't matter if it's defeated. It's all an awareness-raising campaign, Caleb.
It's a bit like he's been on the phone to Daniel Andrews. Daniel, can you give me some advice, mate? What line should I run here? Because remember, Daniel Andrews, there was an IBAC report a couple of months ago suggesting that there had been dodgy deals between the Labor Party and the public service and contracts have been awarded, whatever. And Andrews came out and said, this is an educational report. We're just going to take some things away from this and go and learn about it. And that's exactly what the Prime Minister is doing here by saying, well, we know that this was set up in order to get the Voice over the line, but now it looks like the Voice might not get over the line. We've done some good things anyway. Don't worry about it. It's all good. It was well worth the money. The bloke is backtracking faster than you could believe because he can see the numbers. It's plain as hell that this thing ain't going to get up. And even if you believe that the number's going to be closer than the polling currently shows, which I do, you need a double majority. And I just cannot see any possible way that you're going to get 4 states to vote for it. The last polling that was done that included all of the states individually was a resolve poll on September the 11th, and the only state it showed in support was Tasmania. 1 state. Right. They need 4. It's cool.
And does Tasmania even count? Let's do that. But he's not wrong. It has been very awareness raising. I think it's raised a lot of awareness around the fact that we desperately need an audit. The taxpayers spending almost $40 billion
Not another review, Liz.
On I think this is one that we'd all be happy for. And the government spends this on a very small percentage of the population and then wants to somehow blame the fact that we don't have a voice or, if the referendum doesn't get up, we're now the scapegoat. We're now the problem. We're the reason why all the issues aren't going away because you said no to a voice. No, you're the problem. Stop using us as the cover-up. You've had all this money to spend for a great many years. You haven't hit any of your KPIs, and now you're coming begging to us. I'd be very interested to see what this would have looked like, this referendum, in a different year. Because obviously everyone's just come off the back of the pandemic, everyone's tired, everyone's poor, we've got this cost of living crisis. I read a headline today saying 1 in 5 Aussies, this was news.com.au, 1 in 5 Aussies are cutting back on healthcare appointments. Like, these aren't luxuries. People are literally cutting back on necessary things, but at a different time. Would it have gone differently? Would the polls look differently? I'd be very interested. We'll never know.
Well, maybe. But, if you're interested in closing the gap and doing something for Indigenous people, a $364 million failure of a referendum, when you could have spent that money on their schools crying out for funding in regional centres. We've talked about them in the last couple of weeks. Schools in Alice Springs for Indigenous kids can't get, a few $1 million. Yeah. Here we are with $364 million on a awareness campaign. By the way, when we look at the papers a little later, the front page of The Australian's got Noel Pearson's latest suggestion for how, even at this late stage, the Voice can be rescued. So we'll look at that a little later in the program.